Hello, good evening and welcome to Face the Nation. We're live from the Newsfirst Center in Colombo. Our topic of discussion today is the energy crisis and how do we get out of it. If at some point during tonight's program you should experience a power outage, don't fret. We're streaming this episode live on our Facebook channel, on our Facebook page, Newsfirst.lk, and you can also watch it live on our YouTube channel, Newsfirst Sri Lanka. So don't forget to charge your mobile devices just in case you experience a power outage during our program on the energy crisis. Without further ado, let me quickly introduce our panel of experts this evening. We're joined by Mr. Cyril Suduwalla, former head of laboratory and manager, technical services, oil refinery, Sapagaskanda. He's also an eminent petrochemist and a consultant with the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka as well. We're also joined by Mr. Nimal De Silva, offshore oil and gas exploration consultant. Mr. De Silva joined us on the program a few weeks back when we were talking about the fuel shortages. We're also joined this evening by Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, the past president of the Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka, and last but not least, Professor Anura Vijaypala of the Department of Electrical Engineering at the University of Moratuwa, who also happens to be a former chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board. Professor Vijaypala, I'd like to start tonight's program with you as a former chairman of the CEB and expert in electrical engineering at the University of Moratuwa. Following a meeting, at a press conference held following a meeting this evening on the power and energy crisis in the country, the governor of the central bank announced, don't worry, there is no power crisis, it has been resolved, and dollars will be provided. Dollars are being provided, dollars will be provided. Do you agree with this assessment? Is there no energy crisis in the country anymore?
I think if there's enough dollars to buy fuel, then probably we can avoid the power cuts to maybe to some extent. But even if we run all our thermal power plants, but still run into deficiencies in the water availability, then by March, April period, still we will run into power cuts. So we can't say power crisis is over or the energy crisis is over, and it is a hard hit. It's a hard hit because of our own faults. Because we have, as often stipulated, we have failed to execute any baseload power plants. And some people have taken the government rulers to be deceived that renewables can do it alone, and they have complied. For example, the government has taken a policy decision to stop coal power until no more coal power in Sri Lanka, while India is right now constructing 56,000 megawatts to be completed by 2030. Right now constructing India 56,000 megawatts of coal power plants, which will be completed by 2030. China 247,000 megawatts of coal power plants under construction. And we say, to be clean, we should not do a 500 megawatt power plant in 2017. How foolish. So we don't have a base load. And so, and same India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all are doing that. They are strengthening their base load power generation. Then on top of that, India and China are doing a lot of renewables because they have a strong cheap base load, and China is #1 in solar. Why? They can technically afford to absorb that solar, and they don't have issues that night peak or anything because they have enough base load, both coal and LNG. So we have made the mistakes and come up to here, and now we must genuinely understand and accept our faults and see right forward from here in the right path. And if you take impulsive decisions, when somebody says, okay, don't do this, you take an impulsive decision and say targets like say 2030, 70% renewables. Of course, everybody should like that target, just like the organic fertilizer issue. We all like it, but practicality and affordability we should look at. But unfortunately, we find that the officials, the politicians all get deceived and they'll have a short term life. So they cancelled to a 500 megawatt Sampur power plant in 2017, and today we are paying the price.
Professor Vijayapala, you said faults, but you only really described one fault, or what you perceive to be a fault, being the coal power plant, the scrapping of the coal power plant project in Sampur. But even when you're talking about baseload power, right, that's not the only power plant
Yes.
that has not been operationalized. So the faults doesn't really, even if you perceive coal as being necessary, the fault doesn't just stop there, isn't it?
Yeah.
What happened with the long-term generation expansion plans?
I think we tendered 300 megawatt LNG power plant in 2017, and it was awarded only in 2021. Say Kerala second LNG 300 megawatt project, other than the Yugadanavi, what you call the Sobadanavi, that was tendered in 2017, and it went through lot of appealing processes, then went to court. Court took about a year or so to resolve the matter. But I think CEB is also at fault. They never went to courts and showed to the judges that the importance of quickly finishing the case, because this is an important project. No one took the interest. So the court took its own time in the natural way and got delayed. So that is the second fault. If we awarded the tender by 2018, 19 at least, by now we must have at least the first phase done. But you can see now when it was awarded in 2021, it will come on board in 2023-24. So all these things are accumulated. And now we are putting extra pressure on the available power plant, which are suffering. Right? You are expecting every thermal power plant to run 24 hours, 7 days, right, without rest. Then they run into trouble.
Are we experiencing, do you feel that some of the power outages that people are experiencing, although the officials and the politicians say there's going to be 24-hour uninterrupted power supply, people are experiencing power outages. Do you feel that breakdowns that are caused by overuse of these thermal power plants could be causing these outages?
Yeah, could be due to a variety of reasons. I think about maybe yesterday we saw that water control authorities like say Mahavali, they came on board and said, no, we can't release water from available hydropower reservoirs for power generation priority. In Sri Lanka, the priority number 1 is drinking water, then the irrigation. Third priority is power generation. So until the next season starts, they will not release water for the irrigation purposes. And they have to save water for drinking water purposes. Otherwise the salt water ingress into Kalini River and all these things happen if the river water goes too low. And all these things they are looking in their angle, and that's also important, drinking water. So all these things are putting restrictions on running available hydropower plant. Although we said we have 1400 megawatts of hydropower plant, and also we say we have some water in the reservoirs, we can't run them. So all these restrictions are there. Therefore, the power cuts are due to whatever reasons. When the demand is more than the supply, there's a power cut.
Thank you, Professor Vijayapala. Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, I'd like to come to you next, since we're talking about alternate sources of power. Biomass capacity in Sri Lanka is negligible. I think below 1% of total installed capacity right now. If I'm not mistaken, around about 30 megawatts. As a past president of the Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka, what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel that there is a need to expand biomass capacity in Sri Lanka? Do you feel that it is a viable source of energy, and could it contribute to getting us out of this energy crisis in the short term?
No, I'd like to address it in a much broader sense. To start with, Rajiv, you started talking about energy crisis. You're talking about electricity crisis. Energy is not electricity. Right now it is only about 11%. But 99% of our attention is on that. So as a nation, that is a very, very short-sighted way of doing it. Electricity is the best form of energy, no question about it. In my vision, I would like it to be 100%, all energy should come from electricity. I would agree that is the best way, but we are long way away from that. So our this business of always looking at electricity and talking only about that and without looking at the holistic picture of the energy requirements is the fundamental problem. Other thing is, you see, energy nowadays in our present day technologies is essential as much as food and housing and clothing and things like that. But that is not given that kind of attention. You see, we talk about this kind of thing when there's a power crisis or power shortages, we talk about energy. Rest of the year, we don't talk about it at all. Right? Now, also the thing is, we know this problem comes every year in this part, in these 3 months, dry months. Because rest of the period, we don't look at it at all. And also, we have got a new dimension coming in because of the lack of dollars. So the set answer for this thing of going for emergency power, it cannot be done this time. So that is the main problem. It's a more dollar crisis than energy crisis. But with due respect to Professor, our thinking has to change. This business of talking about base load and base load can come only from coal has to change. Although he cites various figures, we have no coal. So that's not an option at all. Now can you imagine what would have happened if we did build Sampur? Then we won't have coal for that too. And even if we had the money to buy it, it will be costing something like 29-30 rupees per unit. Now we predicted that long ago. Do not go in for some sources of energy which is not in our control. Not 100% necessarily. Like my guru, Dr. Revijan used to say, we should be non-dependent. Because if you are talking about national security, energy security is essential. We can't expect energy security if we are depending on entirely imported.
If all of our energy sources are imported.
Sources coming from on which we have absolutely no control, either on the supply or on the price. We are facing that now. What we predicted years and years ago has come to pass. But still, I'm afraid, Professor, as well as the engineer at CEB are still talking about why Sampur wasn't built. Sampur was not built at that time, mainly because of the way the environment was completely ignored. That again is something that we have talked about, that we can't do all what we want, ignoring everything else. Just getting electricity by some means is not the answer. We can't afford to do that. We are not, shouldn't be allowed. Now this is where our problem is. More than talking as a past president of Bioenergy Association, I would like to talk as a consumer and the main stakeholder in this whole business. We have no say, absolutely no say. CEB decides what they want and claims that only they know what to do. Others don't know anything about it. And they are, I'm afraid, apologies to Anura, they are living the last century. World has changed so drastically. Whatever happened, and also our fault is we did not take certain decisions. I agree with about the LNG plant in 2016. That might have been a good solution because that time we had no option. So I'm glad at least at that time they were talking about LNG rather than on coal. Certainly a better option. And we might have made some good value because the prices were low. I think Mr. Nimal Silva will agree. And if we did it, but again we'll have to point the finger at CEB. The tendering, all that was done by the CEB. Obviously there were some things not good enough. That's why they could go to courts. But having said that one, that was 2016. In 2021, the environment has changed completely. Now, in 2016, nobody would have looked at solar and wind as viable options. You see, prices were too high, technology was not so developed, but that is not the case now. The case is totally different. So this fixation of base load, there are different answers. Other countries have taken those answers. So we have to be talking about those solutions rather than the problems anymore. So we need new thinking entirely, looking at what we have and what are the dangers we have in depending on things we don't have no control on. So therefore, right now, absolutely no reason for us to do any coal power plants, because even if you want to, we don't have the money. Nobody is going to give you money to do coal power plants.
Mr. Jayasinghe, do you feel that the solution to this sort of short-sightedness when it comes to planning your long-term generation, or looking at centuries-old fuel sources like coal? Do you think this can be combated by privatizing the power and energy sector in the country?
It's a governance issue, no? You see, if, for instance, if you think CEB is a private company, they will not be behaving in this way, no? They wouldn't be allowed to behave in that way. And unfortunately, we, the stakeholders of the company, as it was Sri Lanka, we are not allowed to do anything about it. There's a total lack of governance, the entire thing. So I don't blame CEB people, because they are supposed to do something, they have certain ideas, but there's somebody above, the ministry at least. There should be somebody to be overseeing what is being done. How does it reflect on the country as a total, not purely on the interest of the CEB or their planning or whatever it is. There has to be independence. Absolutely nothing is done.
So in a nutshell, what you're saying is it's not about whether it's privatized or a public enterprise, it's about the lack of accountability.
Exactly, exactly. It doesn't matter whether it's private or otherwise. But you can't allow people to do, and also you know how much money we have spent. It's our money, and we have no say over it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, past President, Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka. Next, we have Mr. Nimal De Silva, offshore oil and gas exploration consultant. Mr. De Silva, we were talking about LNG, and we were also talking about the Kerawalla-Pittiya second stage that was supposed to have been tendered, I think, back in, or supposed to have come online in 2019, but only the tender has only been finalized in 2021. How feasible, as we were talking about baseload energy, how feasible for is it for Sri Lanka to shore up our baseload energy requirements with LNG?
Well, thanks for inviting me for this program. First of all, I must tell something. Is this: we don't have a national policy. This country doesn't have a national policy. They should have thought about this energy crisis long time ago. If we have a national policy, every year we will revise the energy requirement for the coming years. So as these gentlemen said, for the past 10 years or something, there was no power plants came up. And we only talk about them. Because we don't have a national policy and we don't have a body like that. But if you take, for example, India, they have a national policy. And I can quote the LNG or whatever source, whether it's LNG or diesel or whatever it is, we have to plan it properly. So first of all, when you are any country, when they think of energy, they have to see whether they have the natural resources first. Say like, if you're going to use LNG, do we have natural gas resources? Or if you are going to use oil, do we have oil wells? No. Then if you have to import, then you have to think very hard, and you have to be very careful about it. You have to be at it all the time. So what happened is here, we've been talking about so many things, different ideas, but we were not concentrating on properly. So all these things you can go back to in 27th of August 1859. The first oil well, commercial oil well, was in Pennsylvania, a village called Titus. Well, so from that day onwards, world changed. The energy situation in the whole world changed. The first, we got the kerosene to light lamps. And even Sri Lanka, we had kerosene coming from US those days. That is Standard Oil, right? That is today we call it Exxon Mobil. So this is a book, right? This is the book. This is the Mahavansa of oil industry. And it says, Oil, Money and Power. So in this book being written from the day one, from the 1958 up to today. And you will see a lot of examples, many countries fall into these traps. So this is where, now, if we talk about now we have a gas field in Mana Basin. Now we discovered that in 2011. Now 11 years gone, we haven't done anything. But if you look at India, in I can quote this, what former Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, he did this to the Parliament in 1956, January 26. He said to the Parliament, oil, everyone knows, is of vast importance in the world today. A country that does not produce its own oil is in a weak position. From the point of view of defense, the absence of oil is a fatal weakness. So Pandit Nehru realized that. And what he did, in 1956, he formed a PSU, Public Service Unit, called Oil and Gas Natural Council. So then it was formed in 1958. In 1970, they dug the first offshore well, and that was with the assistance from Soviet Union. And we also did the same thing in 1971 in Sri Lanka. With the aid of Soviet Union, we drilled a few wells in Pesal. We didn't find anything. Nor did the Indians in the first attempt. But we gave up. But Indians continues. And they found oil in 1974. 4 years later, they found Bombay High in the sea. And that field is still producing. And we gave up. And now, after so many years, we found gas. Now 10 years gone. We haven't done anything. But compared to India, today we have oil, Indian Oil Company here. So Indian Oil Company is an offshoot of this ONGC. And it was formed a bit later. And it is actually formed as a downstream company. Now, they are the biggest money earner in India, the government institutions. So what India did, we didn't do it. So even now, if we plan it properly, we can get Mana Basin gas.
Mr. De Silva, the thing is, when you're looking at all of these technologies, again, there are many things that India has done that we haven't done or we don't have the capacity to do. Because as you mentioned, sure, we could have gone the oil and gas route and exploited the reserves that we have in the Mana Basin. But at the same time, you also, like, for example, India is operating 7 nuclear power plants, one of the most efficient sources of energy known to man. So there are many things that India has done that we haven't done. My problem is, are we looking to the past when we are looking at exploiting these technologies?
No, I'm not looking at the past. I'm talking about the present. If we are looking at the past, then we can go into coal or other things. But in the present world, not many countries like nuclear. Germany closed down all the nuclear plants.
No, I'm not saying that nuclear is feasible for Sri Lanka, but I'm saying, should we be looking at other, like solid biomass?
Nuclear is not a new thing. It's it's a fairly old technology. But present day, the latest technology is LNG. That is more the cleanest, right, compared to other, the sources, and it is easy to handle. And it is the safest, and it is plenty available. If you, and it's cost-wise is cheap. If you, use nuclear, disposing the nuclear waste is a problem, right? And hazardous. And the coal, okay, it's cheap, but then the environment, the pollution to the environment. So the LNG is the best thing. But I think all these things are down to geopolitics now. If you read that book, what I just showed you, the whole world changed because of oil. And it's happening in Sri Lanka also now. Because we have a vast sea. Our sea is bigger than Saudi Arabia. We have a lot of oil and gas around our island. That is why IOC is here now. They want the Trinco tank farm. They are coming here with a purpose. Because that tank farm was built by the British in 1924 and they completed in 1930. And they were planning to build a refinery. But unfortunately, they couldn't do it because in 1930 there was a recession. Then after the recession, World War II came. After the World War II, our independence struggle started. So the British left, they couldn't build that. Otherwise, we would have had 101.
So in 70 plus years of independence, why has no government taken the step to utilize that resource?
Yeah, because this is where, we didn't have a national policy and nobody recognized the importance of that tank farm, right? That is where, even today.
Because as per what you're saying, it sounds like our energy crisis is not a recent product of 10 or 20 or even 30 years ago. It goes all the way back to 1948.
Yeah, it's all the way, it goes back to, because this is something, you have to at it all the time. Because in the modern world, we need more energy every year. The population getting bigger and the new technology and, people are, using more vehicles and, all this lighting and all the energy is a must thing. So we have to spend more time and resources. Because without energy, present days, we cannot survive. And today, look at what happened, now, power crisis, no lights, no cars, all these things. And we are got used to it now, right? So we have to now go back to the dark ages now again, right? So this is, sad.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. De Silva. We'll come back to you. I want to quickly bring in Mr. Cyril Suduwala as well, former head of laboratory and manager technical services, oil refinery, Sapukaskanda, and also an eminent petrochemist. Mr. Suduwala, right now, our energy, or rather to be more specific, our electricity supply is being decided on an almost weekly basis, whether or not we can raise enough dollars to pay for the next shipment of diesel or furnace oil or fuel, basically. Is this how long, I don't want to ask, I mean it's rhetorical to ask, is this sustainable policy? How long can we continue this this dance of, on a weekly basis trying to decide whether or not we're going to be able to have an uninterrupted power supply?
Yeah, thank you. Now, anyway, in today's situation, even though we consider the energy crisis or electricity crisis, the actual crisis is not the energy or the petroleum, it's the dollar crisis. But when you go back, why the dollar crisis, I said, now the most reliable energy security is the fossil fuels or the if you start from either LNG or naphtha or the diesel or furnace oil or heavy furnace oil, whatever it comes, fossil fuel, even the coal is a fossil fuel. So now what is the problem is to find the diesel, either diesel or furnace oil. Now, for example, today so many ships are anchored outside harbour, and when you get the money, you get one by one or two ships unloaded, and that also then you pump into the power stations and get it done. But really, if you compare the refinery Sapukaskanda production, even it is for 50,000 barrels per day. Now it is, as he said, it is because of the government inconsistent policies. Now for over a half decade, the refinery only so many the developments were there, but the most required developments were not carried out, like hydrocracker, introduction of hydrocracker, or the expansion of, or the Soren project expansion of the crude oil throughput. They all were abandoned because of inconsistent policies. And I know the refinery expansion, when the government or the ministers changed, they approached so many countries and going through and making visits. But finally nothing has happened. Now I coming to refinery. Now if you take the today's oil imports, now if you want to run the refinery, you get the crude oil and you get the from the top of the LNG. We don't use the methane is used for energy, internal energy production, and then we get the naphtha. Naphtha we come to Kalanitis for combined cycle power plant, and then we go to diesel. Diesel we go to the power plant, and then you get the furnace oil, and the bottom you get the heavy furnace oil. You directly pump into the Sapakaskanda, the power plant. And now with the shutdown of the refinery, even with the 50% the throughput refinery, so you are importing everything. What happened is now, so you get the one crude oil and produce so many products, or the 7 products, and when you import, what happened is now if you import diesel, if you import other products, there are so many the losses normally calculated in the transfer losses and the operation losses and various losses every product. So if you get 7 products, 0.5%, 0.5%, you are paying huge amount of money in addition to the demurrage charges, in addition to the other shipping, other operational charges. But simply you can get the crude oil and get the product. So that is the unplanned work, because now get the product, the refined product, they think that is easiest way to get the, like a piece meal, you get the whatever you have money, you get diesel, and whatever you then you get the tomorrow you have money, you get the furnace oil. It's not the way now. Even you get the furnace oil, you won't be able to get the heavy furnace oil, because the heavy furnace oil is very sticky, and you cannot simply import. So the refinery is the only they can provide heavy furnace oil to Sapakaskanda heavy furnace oil power plant. So these are the constraints the government having. So the best thing is that you get the energy security, then you make sure the petroleum product or the petroleum products are the continuous supply. And even if you get the interrupted supply, what happens, you sometimes today you operate power plant, and today if you don't have the furnace, you shut down again, and again you operate. Operating shutdown is, any plant is a huge loss of energy and loss of money. So you are having the dollar crisis, you are running short of money, but you are spending more to purchase. Now not only that, today I am not 100% sure, but now when you buy the whatever petroleum products, you pay the Singapore flat price or whatever the standard price plus premium or minus premium. But because of the oil crisis, and we have the ships are coming in anchored outside and waiting for a long time, I heard that now the premium is about $4 per the barrel. So $4 is the compared to other countries a very huge premium. So usually it should be less than $1. So if we are paying.
Mr. Sudhuwala, you worked now in the fuel industry for a long time as head of laboratory, manager technical services at the Sapakaskanda refinery, a petrochemist by training. You're also a consultant with the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. When we were speaking to Mr. De Silva earlier, he said that our energy crisis, our power and energy crisis is not a recent manifestation. You can trace it all the way back to independence, basically 1948. When you look at the problems plaguing our power and energy sector, whether it is a shortage of dollars or a lack of planning or a lack of policy, where do you see the problem, the blame? Who is to blame for this? Is it the regulator? Is it the CEB? Is it the Public Utilities Commission? Is it private power operators? Is it the politicians? Is it the successive governments? Where does the blame lie?
No, in fact, if as Mr. Nimal Sila said, now the petroleum started in about 160 years before. It is exactly 27th August 1859. The first oil was dug in Pennsylvania. From that date, it was about only 10 barrels were taken for just less than 10 cents per barrel that day, because that the oil taken was used for not for energy purpose. It's used for the skin diseases and for sore throats and the making the bald-headed, some treatment like that, the medicinal purpose. If we even so like that, when it comes to the petroleum as an energy source started really after kerosene lamp and the Second World War only. It came as an energy source. And now what happened is, as he said, now the petroleum, naturally everybody expected depletion, and one day you will have to find some other alternative. But already after, because of using petroleum products, and the entire world, all world leaders in the COP20 and signed the Paris Agreement, they said no, the fuel, you have to find the alternative. But the finding alternative, as the Professor Vijaypala said, is not easy task. Even you find the solar energy, wind energy, whatever you can generate in the time to time, and you have to store it. And now in Sri Lanka, whatever the solar power is without storage. And now in the petroleum industry is the only, the fossil fuel is the only secured the source of energy so far you can use day and night. But why we are running short of all these problems? Because of totally, if you go back one by one, you will stay the lack of consistent national policy. Because if again I will go back to our oil exploration. Our oil exploration started somewhere in 1970s, and the Pesali oil, why we abandoned during the election. I will not name any political party. During the election, we were in the university studying that time as a student, and they said, okay, there's a song also, we found oil in the Pesali, and the Russians were just abandoned and gone. And that time the refinery Sapugastan, the head of lab was one Mr. N.L. Raja, and when the sample was given, they said, okay, we found oil in the Pesali, and he tested and said, no, this is not oil, this is lubricant oil, lubricant, water and mud mixed up together, and is the oil. But they want the report. They want the report from that then head of lab. Okay, give me report. This crude oil for political reasons. And finally he had to leave the country for some other country, and then it taken to that sample another place and took as it's a crude oil. But after the election, the Russians left and the oil exploration abandoned.
There's something that I find a little hard to believe this. If Sri Lanka does have feasible reserves of oil and gas, as you all have brought out, I don't think we would have kept our sovereignty or whatever form of sovereignty we have for this long. Surely someone would have come in, whether it's the Indians or the Chinese or the Americans or the Russians or back then the Soviets. Surely by now someone would have come in to snap it up if those reserves were feasible.
In fact, of course, we have the reserves now. The Mana Basin. Earlier we had the Kaveri Basin also. Kaveri Basin now we have only 25%. Balance is India. But when you come to Mana Basin, now it is we have done the satellite survey in somewhere in 1978, and then the 2D seismic and 3D seismic and the test well, and it once given to Indian Carine, and they also made a test well. But the test well, because the people are saying, okay, we found oil, and all these are probabilities. Because the oil well, you can't simply say you found oil, okay, 60% is the probability. But we know that after test well, we know that we have the gas reserve. We have the certain quantity of the gas.
Is it feasible?
Yeah, feasible, because with the deep sea, because when you get the oil well, it is deep sea, and the deep sea oil well, we have to bring a oil rig, and then the oil, we have to dig it, and then it's not easy, but the technology is there. Only thing is, it may not be economical or viable, economically viable.
That's my question, because if you have
you
a natural resource.
Huh? Yeah, just one minute.
I'll cut it.
Yeah.
If we have a natural resource, like whatever it is, whether it's oil or coal or gold or diamonds or uranium or phosphate whatever the natural, if you have a natural resource that is economically viable, then it is unlikely that if you are ignoring it, then it's unlikely that no one else is going to come and like snap it up.
No, that's what. No, I'm saying even I use the economically not viable. As it is, if you take the gas, maybe if you take the price of the gas, maybe not economically viable. But the new technology is there. When you get the gas you can convert to all the petrol, diesel, everything by the GTL, because the gas to liquid technology is there. So in the like Qatar, you convert everything, you can get the petrol, diesel. It is viable. And the lack of consistent policy. Of course, we don't. In Sri Lanka, we have lack of technology, but we have to get technology. And the first well, maybe after first well, second well, Sri Lanka will do it. So I think the only way that escape from this issue is immediately as fast as at least bring one oil rig and start producing our own gas, and then gas we can, but the gas we can get, we can even use gas as it is, we can use gas for petrochemical, and we can even convert it to petrol, diesel, anything by GTL technology.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suduella. Mr. De Silva, I can see you're very excited about the question on whether on the feasibility of these reserves. I promise we'll start with you as soon as we come back from this short commercial break.
One disinfectant to keep your hands, home surfaces, electronic devices and personal belongings safe from bacteria, virus and fungi. Sri Lanka's first SLS certified disinfectant, now with lemon fresh and ice pine fresh fragrances. Sun all-purpose disinfectant spray.
COVID-19 සඳහා ආරක්ෂිත පියවර. නිතරම හොඳින් සබන් යොදා දෑත් සෝදන්න. සබන් හෝ විසබීජ නාශක මධ්‍යසාරයක් භාවිතා කර දෑත් පිරිසිදු කරන්න. සැම විටම අන් අය සමග මීටරයක දුරස්ථභාවයක් පවත්වා ගන්න. හැකි සෑම විටම නිවසේ රැඳී සිටින්න. නිරතුරුවම නිවැරදිව මුඛාවරණ පළඳින්න.
තනිව යන්න බෑයි කියන කාරණේද අධ්‍යාපනයේදී මම කියන්නේ ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් සිදු වෙන දේ.
අපිට රුසියානු සපත්තුව මේ ලංකාවට දාන්න බෑ, ඒක ලොකුයි. චීන සපත්තුව සීන සමාජවාදී ඒකත් හරියන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක මේ කකුලට පොඩි. අපි අපේම සපත්තුව මහ ගන්න ඕනේ කියලා.
එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ මානව හිමිකම් කවුන්සිලය කියලා කියන්නේ මානව හිමිකම් පිළිබඳව ලෝක පාර්ලිමේන්තුව.
අපි පරිසරය ගැන දෙකක් තිබුණා.
මම ඉස්කෝලේ යන කාලෙත් මේක තුන්වන ලෝකේ රටක්. දැන් මම මැරෙන්න යන කාලෙදි තුන්වන ලෝකේ රටක්.
ආණ්ඩුව රූපාන්තරණය වෙනවා රාජ්‍ය බවට.
එත දෙක එත පහේදී තමයි මේ වතු ඔක්කොම නැෂනලයිස් කරේ.
එහෙමයි ධර්මශ්‍රී, රට ගැන විතරක් නෙමෙයි මම ගැනත් මම බය වෙලා ඉන්නේ.
අපනයන කවුද කරන්නේ? කවුද විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයට ගියන්නේ? කවුද අපේ ව්‍යාපාර කරන්නේ? විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයට ගියන්නේ?
Welcome back to Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is the power and energy crisis in the country and how do we get out of it. When we left off, we were talking about the potential of oil and gas reserves off the northwest of the country, in the northwestern seas of the country, of Mannar, in the Mannar Basin specifically. Mr. De Silva, I saw you were very excited about that question. So again, I'll phrase the same question that I posed to Mrs. Suduella. What I find difficult to sort of grapple with is the fact that if we do have such vast and economically viable natural resources just sitting there, how come that in the years that we've known it, whether it was since 2011 or whether it was since 1978, how come that no great power, no superpower has snapped it up?
Okay. Can you see this?
Not clearly, but I'm sure you can explain it.
Yeah, this is a study I did in 2015 in London. I got all the information from the PRDS, that is the Petroleum Resource Development Secretariat. And you know, we dug 4 wells, we found gas in 2 wells. So they actually, one well is called Dorado, that is 22 kilometers off the coast. The other one is Barracuda, that is 64 kilometers off the. So what is the problem is, in Sri Lanka, our water depth, that is about 5,000 feet. So when you have to drill, you have to have a structure, right? So in this oil industry, at the very beginning when you go to the offshore, we first started with 8 foot of water drilling. Now we can go up to 10,000, right? Because there are different structures, but it's the cost, right? There are fixed platforms, floating, tension leg, various spar, and different types of structures we can build. We have done all that in my career, right? I got involved in many projects in different types of platforms. So the water depth is the one governs the cost. It's obvious, no?
Yeah.
So then it is not only the problem. We have gas. If it is oil, somebody would have come. Now what happened if a company comes to Sri Lanka to drill for gas? There are companies who can do it, right? What are they going to do with the gas? They can't take it. Because to take it, you have to make it to LNG. That is another expensive operation. So we have to buy the gas. Sri Lanka should be the buyer for that gas. And then who will be the buyer? CEB. So CEB has to buy this gas, right? So either that is the alternative for Sri Lanka for these new portraits who are coming. They will do this eventually. That is why they are coming. They will first start with LNG and then go to Mannar Basin and do a pipeline to Colombo, right? So getting the gas out is not the problem. What are you going to do with the gas? How are you going to utilize? And who is going to pay for it?
So as per what you're describing, Mr. De Silva, these gas reserves would primarily be useful only for domestic consumption in Sri Lanka and not for export.
We don't know that, because this is where underneath the earth crust, we don't know how much gas there, but we only drill 2 wells.
Okay. Is there a way we can estimate the amount?
Yeah, we have to do more wells. Now look at this. When we first, in Norway, when they first found a field called Ekofisk, that was 50 years ago, in 1970, right? So they found that, field, and at that time they thought that might only last for 5 years. They are still really, getting oil out of that field, and they have estimated there's enough oil for another 50 years. And there is another place in Saudi, place called Gawa. That field was discovered in 1949. And they are still getting oil out of that, and that is going to be another 100 years. So therefore, what is underneath the earth structure, we can't estimate like that. We have to drill more wells. That is why the Bombay High, when the Indians drilled the first well, they found oil there and they started drilling. And when this, in geology, in geophysics and geology, and this oil, belt that can travel sometimes 100 miles. Usually it goes for about 20-40 miles. My experience in the North Sea in UK, most of the fields are, fairly big. So at the moment, these 2 wells, what we have done, the PRDS already estimated, right, there's 6 trillion cubic feet of gas. That is enough for 20 years for our consumption, for our electricity. But if we drill more wells, then we might find more gas. So then we might be able to export, convert into LNG and export. But that we have to invest. So the government has to invest first. For foreign company to come and do it, no foreign company will come to dump their dollars here, taking the 100% risk. So at least we should participate with the 10%. So I have estimated that this field will cost about $1.5 billion. So at least we must put $200 million as our part, like a goodwill. Then only an oil company will consider coming here. Otherwise, no company will come because they are not going to take the 100% risk. We also have to take the risk. That is how it's been done all over the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nimal De Silva. So the oil and gas, or exploiting the gas reserves in the Mana Basin is maybe a long-term solution to, or long-term ongoing solution to our power crisis. Let's look at some of the problems that are facing us right now in the immediate term, the short term, whether it is a dollar crisis or an energy crisis. So for the Q&A session, let me quickly introduce our two journalists this evening. On my right is Azra Hassan, and on my left, Shehan Ranatunga. Let's start with Azra.
Thank you, Majid. I'll pose my first question to Professor Anura. Professor, just today the Sri Lankan High Commissioner to India mentioned that discussions are underway to hand over the construction of a wind and a solar power plant to India, and that also they are planning on sharing electricity with India through power cables. I'm trying to understand, in this current context, what kind of a benefit can a discussion like that bring to give a solution to Sri Lanka?
I think that is a geopolitical interest, I would dare to say that, because when I was the chairman of the Trincomalee coal power company, which was scrapped because of the cancellation of Sampur project, now we had 500-acre land there, which was fenced and clearly identified, and so it was made into one, and India is interested in that piece of land, and so by way of a solar plant or wind power plant, so they would like their geopolitical interest to extend there. I think that is the main idea, and neither wind nor solar can bring us a solution for this evening peak energy demand crisis. Now today we have 230 megawatt of wind connected to our grid, 100 megawatt newly commissioned CEB plant and 130 megawatt of other private power plant. 230 megawatts already connected. Today I checked with the CEB production rates today and all these days, it is only 20 megawatts. Out of 230 megawatt this off season for wind, so until April we will get about 20 megawatts. So that will not be a solution for the kind of problem we are facing today. So it should be base load. Maybe I agree with others that saying that we are too late for coal now because we can't fund coal. India and China are doing a lot of coal, thousands and thousands of megawatts of coal, because they have their own money and own technology, and therefore they can implement them.
And they have the coal mines.
And they have their coal mines, and both countries are importing hundreds of millions of coal. Hundreds of millions of tons of coal, both countries are importing.
But they also have their own
coal. Their own coal is there, but that's not enough for them. Right? That is not enough for them. So, and we can't say that that they are fools to go for coal if coal is not cheap. Right? In thousands and thousands of megawatts. And then now I think best chance is now to go for LNG in the right way. But I think with this New Fortress Energy unsolicited proposal, that proper tendering process is also stopped, and therefore I think that this will get further delayed, and therefore this to Ashra's question, I think India is more interested in not helping us with this solar or wind, but it may be geopolitical interest because they are already on the upper side, they are on the oil palm. So the bottom side of the port, they would like to have 500 megawatt power plant, whatever, with their presence. That is my opinion, and but that will not solve our issues.
Mr. Jayasinghe, you were also very vocal about the responsibilities of the Ceylon Electricity Board, and you were constantly pointing the finger at them. We have two separate subject ministers in terms of power and energy, and all what you see right now is like a tug of war, constantly pointing the finger at each other, saying certain things that they should be internally discussed are now out in the open. informing the public about things like that. What is the responsibility and the role of the ministries when tackling this particular issue?
Yeah, that's what I started by saying that energy can't be looked in isolation of, electricity there, transport there, and things like that. And also, I fully agree with Ms. Nimal. We have absolutely no policy. You see, that way, and also the fact of the matter is there can't be two ministers. You may need a minister of energy, not a minister of power and another minister of energy. That's why the whole problem is because lack of policy. That's what, although I am very vocal about arguing against CEB's actions, but it all comes down to the national policy and the governance. Absolutely no governance. You see, like I started, I might as well mention some numbers. I just picked up in the Silumina class. From 2006 to 2011, we had to put up 595 billion rupees to keep CEB alive. So with the present one, it would have now well past the trillion mark. How can we continue to do that one? You see, I can't blame CEB because CEB is kept alive by doing that kind of thing. But the basic question is, what do we do? We have to keep them going so that otherwise we won't have power. Is that answer? That can't be the answer. Then see, there has to be an entirely different way of looking at how the sector is run. That is the role of the government. That's why we have ministers and we have bigger people than that. But like these gentlemen mentioned, nothing has been done on that basis.
But none of these solutions are short-term, Mr. Jai.
No, absolutely no. It's a very, very interesting academic discussion. But that's not going to solve our problem. Not now, not next year, not the year after, or even several years down. We better start looking at it. And as long as it's our gas, I'm all for it. You see, not imported gas. Because that is what is causing us a problem now. Either we pay dollars for coal and oil or we pay for LNG. That's no solution at all. Why isn't that simple fact being recognized? So that is where, although we are very much supportive of renewable energy, primary requirement is to get indigenous energy. And that way, Sri Lanka is so fortunate, all our indigenous energy is renewable. Until sometime in the future, perhaps natural gas would come, then of course the picture will change. I'm hoping in my lifetime that will happen. But right now, the situation is not that. Now, Professor was critical about this declaration of 70%. It was 80%, not 70%, by the way. You see, that CEB was responsible knocking it down to 70%. But that is in 2030, there's 9 years to go. You see, although, forgive me for comparing this immediate decision to go for carbonic in overnight. It's not that, there's 9 years this thing. But what is wrong now? Because CEB is the monopoly. They are responsible entirely. But there is no mandate given to say, no, I want 70%. Come up with your answer how to do that one. Yes, they are yet to come up with a long-term generation plan. Sorry to be pointing at Anura. So, there's no plan, no action plan, how to come to 70%. You talk about 70% in 2030, so you can't wait till 2029 and say that I want 70%. And remember, you see, although this is not a fair comparison, in 1995, we were 95% renewable electricity generation. Of course, the amount of generation was very much
shall
lower.
I put a question on this? So,
yeah, of course.
Go ahead,
yes.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Question is this now. You can see now. I think that renewable should go in the right mix. Without a base load of either imported energy or our own energy, we can't do it. Right? We can't do it. That is simply explained by having 230 megawatt of wind right now, and when the power cuts come, they are contributing only 20 megawatts.
Yeah.
And when we have solar in the daytime, even if we have the 500 megawatts of proposed Indian plant in the Sampur, it will not help us in the evening.
But why does it have to be coal? Why can't it be LNG?
And now when they have coal tenders for solar with storage, the price is 39 rupees a unit. Is that affordable?
No. This is.
But
totally
why does
wrong.
it have to be coal? Why can't it be LNG? Why
LNG
for example, what
So LNG
what kind
messed up now?
Some kind of a base load power plants we need.
Yeah.
Without that, you can't do.
But then you look at what Mr. Jaisingh is saying, right? It looks like the CB strategy is to wait until the government changes and just drag its feet.
Then
and they can continue with
another one will happen. Yeah. No, to correct Patta, we never say that it has to be 100% renewables. We have a base of, you know, well, there are 900 megawatts of coal. It's not going to go away. And we still have a number of oil plants which are going to be there for a while. You see, it's not a case of going for 100%.
You know, that another thing is, no, in the world, oil-based electricity generation is a foolish thing, oil-based.
So
now, we have done it to the maximum, right? By the environmental factors and all these things, the CEB was pushed to implement government decisions. CEB was to push to go for large number of oil power plants. Oil is the most expensive for power generation. So in the world electricity generation, it is only 3%. Only 3% electricity in all over the world is produced by burning oil. We are doing to the tune of say 30% based on oil. And therefore, we must move away from this. Otherwise,
well and true, we must move away from the oil.
Yes,
oil is good as an emergency power supply, maybe.
Yes.
But my question to you, Professor Vijaypal, is why coal? Why not LNG?
Yes. Now I told you, no. Now the coal bus is gone now.
Yeah.
Because we can't fund it.
Yeah.
We don't have money. LNG feasible. It's still feasible to fund. So I think we should accelerate.
So why wasn't the CEB when the CEB had the chance to focus on LNG, you know, back then, whether it's 5 years ago or 10 years ago, when, like Mr. Jaisingh says, when the regulator and the government is saying, okay, this is what we want, draw up your long-term generation expansion plan in line with what we have asked for, the CEB kept putting coal in there.
No, I will give the
exactly. But those days government policy was set.
No, there was no policy.
Government policy was least cost generation plan.
Just to interrupt just 1 second.
Contradicting.
Now this, as he said, the LNG, now we know that it is totally, we confirm that we have LNG reserves. And the first feasibility was done in 2006 and sponsored by Said Global in USA. But that report is submitted to Treasury, and they were discussing all the time. But in Sri Lanka now the oil exploration starts somewhere in 1970s. Today now almost 40 years gone. They're still discussing feasibility study, but nothing. That is because again we are going back to lack of consistent the policies. Otherwise feasibility is done in 2006. How it if the Mena Basin, if you take oil and go to Hambantota Harbour, where you get the LNG and the regasification, and then the storage, and get the pipeline through the express highway to Colombo and everywhere, and distribute right throughout, and the transport sector and the domestic, and come to Muthurajavira, all feasibility was done, and the feasibility just now collect the dust collector at Central Bank.
And that feasibility study, I must say, is dust now, because the world has changed completely.
Yeah.
You see, this is unfortunate thing. But Dajib, I would like to come back to our subject. What is the solution for the present problem? Talking about LNG is nice and very interesting, but that is going to solve our problem.
Mr. Disila, what's the immediate solution?
Yeah. I think we are looking at this current problem in a wrong way. We are overlooking, bypassing two things. We have a deal now. We have two ministers coming on TV and arguing with each other, asking dollars from each one. You give me dollars, I'll give you oil and that. But those two ministers are doing it's a drama. Because the dollars are to the treasury. The man at the treasury says, I have enough dollars.
Yes.
Right? But these two ministers, what are they doing? One minister is got this American deal, LNG. Other minister got the Trinco tank farm. Oil minister, and these both are coming from the treasury. They have signed these agreements, two agreements, and they are trying to make people suffer, so eventually people will give up and go for this, people to, okay, LNG is the best solution. The company is here, the electricity is problem, there's no electricity, so we'll let these Americans do their, power plants. And then they say we need oil. Let's India, give us the oil, we'll give them the tank farm, then India will give us the money and give the oil, and then problem is solved. The government, the treasury got what they want. That is what they are doing. But this $30 million for the oil is not a big problem. Because for oil imports, you only need $30 million, not 500 million. 500 million for the other, transport and all that. For power generation, we only need $30 million. That $30 million, we can get it very easily. In this book, I can show you, you go to a Middle East country, country to country, you can do a negotiation and get a, the concession loan for 6 months, $180 million. Then 6 months we can, the rain will come, we can, but this is a complete drama.
Mr. De Silva, you seem to be making, I'm not sure, let me try to condense it, because it sounded to me like you were making a rather serious allegation that these politicians are deliberately bankrupting the country so that they can sell off these resources.
Yeah, they have already signed the agreements, no? You saw the power minister, the energy minister wasn't there when they signed the agreement. Because he knows his political career will be finished. But the power minister, he is about to retire. Because the power minister, been in this business for a long time. He was the 1977, he was the working director in Ceylon Petroleum. Right? During Jaya Jayawardena government, he was appointed as the working director at the Petroleum Corporation. Then he changed parties now, and he's actually been in the politics for a long time. He might retire. So he's given this task, okay, handle this. Right, tank farm, the power, the LNG. And this other minister, I don't think he's actually doing it according to his heart, giving these tanks to the Indians. But he is forced to do that. Otherwise, what the hell he's going to do? He'll be out of the government.
Mr. De Silva, is the solution to the problem maybe to merge the Minister of Power and Minister of Energy and make it one portfolio rather than having two different?
No,
simplistic answer.
Usually it is the Minister of Energy.
It should be on Minister of Energy.
Minister of Energy.
Or Power and Energy.
Right? So, the energy...
We had for very short periods of time, we had situations like that. We have one minister, both power and energy.
So is it justifiable to have two separate ministers?
No, it's not. That's why I started by saying...
the government did this?
It was one ministry, now they've broken down to two.
Yeah, all this what Mr. De Silva is saying, where does leave us? We the people. That question has never been asked, and we are never allowed the chance to ask that question.
Where does it leave us?
Yeah, no, where do we ask? That's the thing. Thank you very much for at least allowing us to come and talk like that. That has to be answered. You see, the thing is, right now, whether right or wrong, there is a government policy saying 70% renewables have to be by 2030. There's a government institution totally owned by the government, a monopoly, right? For 2 years, they were not even ready to accept this thing. But even now, there are nobody in the government with enough courage to say, no, you bloody well do it. My wife told me not to use bloody. But you see, that is exactly what Prime Minister Modi said. He said, I want 100,000 megawatts of solar, you do it. Then they are doing it already. Where is that kind of governance here? Yeah, until we do that, talking about CEB's misdeeds or anything like that, or talking to the Indians on that is no use at all. And I invite you again to come back to ask, what do we do now? Not what we will do 5 years down the road.
Because this LNG, the CEB had an ongoing tender. They spent 2 years preparing that tender. And just because they closed that tender, this New Fortress, came and, they were given this. But then, as a, this CEB can handle that job with the CPC. Because CPC is the one who has the responsibility for petroleum products. Petroleum comes under CPC. LNG comes under petroleum. It's a petroleum product. So CPC can import LNG and give it to the power plants. So CEB will get the electricity. But at the moment, problem is now both of these institutions, CEB and CPC, are bankrupt.
CPC is asking CEB for dollars if you want.
No, they both bankrupt. No, they both don't have money. They owe the treasury and the banks a lot of money. So what the government is trying to do, keep those two people. We'll just take away the energy and oil away from these two and give it to somebody else. Then those two institutions eventually the Sapugaskanda refined all over.
The country is. I mean,
what we don't realize is all that money owed is paid by us. You see, all that $1 trillion rupees spent over that one. I don't know how much was subsidized for CPC. All that is paid by us, and we have no say on this one. So
because it's with these public enterprises.
Exactly.
There are very few public enterprises.
I can show you this. I can just show you this. In India, right? These public institutions, they are called it Maharatna, Navaratna, and Miniratna. Do you know that? There are 328 institutions in India. They are all government owned, and 11 of them are Maharatna. To become a Maharatna, they have to have a profit more than 5,000 crore, right? So the last year, Indian Oil Corporation, IOC, made $2.9 billion profit, and National Thermal Power Company Limited,
TPC,
made $2 billion profit, and Coal India, $2.2 billion profits, and like that, the total of 14 billion profits made by these Maharatna institutions. And our Maharatna institution, two of them, CEB and CPC, losing money. So nobody is asking why are you losing? There's no national policy. That's what happened. That is, the problem is we don't have any accountability, no auditing, nobody is in charge of, looking at these things, why it's not functioning properly. The government comes, they change national policy, give subsidies to this and and the CEB gives, and they say you go to the People's Bank of Ceylon, you will get the money. Eventually, those two institutions owes money to, and we have paid the electricity bill, we have paid our oil bill, and now today we can't buy oil, we can't have electricity.
But there's also an issue of, I think the PUCSL noted, I believe it was last year or mid last year, that consumers also owe the CEB in excess of 43 billion rupees in unpaid bills.
Yeah, mostly government institutions. Mostly government institutions, not you and I.
Yes,
they would have promptly come and cut off the power.
But they call the consumers, and we tend to think
so
it's
when they say consumers, they mean it's not the ordinary
and the
citizen.
petroleum also same. Most of the government institutions, Sri Lankan Airlines, CGR.
My question is why India can do it, why we can't do it?
Why we can't do it?
No, right? You asked the question right at the beginning. Yeah. We don't know where we are going. We are just going day to day, and
Mr. Vijaypala, it seems that Mr. Jayasinghe and Mr. Mr. De Silva are suggesting that at the heart of this crisis, where is this energy crisis, the dollar crisis, etc., is actually a crisis of governance and a lack of accountability. Do you believe that that is the case with the power?
To some extent, there is a issue of governance, but governance comes from the very top, not only in within these institutions, because these institutions, together with the PUCSL, are not allowed to work independently. Now, the PUCSL has the right to every 6 months to set the tariffs depending upon the cost which CEB should justify, and then the prices will go up and down accordingly. And this has never happened. It is our last revision was in 2013, and the oil prices go up and other costs go up, and the CEB is expected to sell at 750 or 5 rupees a unit to certain categories, which is not possible. Then the government has to naturally refund them. That is what today what has happened. Today, I think in the news they said the president has advised the treasury to pay 93 billion rupees to CB and then to CPC. So we all pay that.
Exactly.
So we have electricity bill we pay, and today we are paying, I calculate 13,000 each consumer. On behalf of us, the government has paid 13,000 rupees on average on the 7 million the customers to CP. So remember, when you pay the electricity bill through other means also, you are paying another part of the electricity bill.
Exactly.
And coming to your previous question about now, right now also the electricity is being cut, and also tomorrow the engineers have said that whatever the president has ordered, tomorrow also they can't avoid electricity. I think we are cutting the electricity in the very old fashioned way of 1996. We did the first substantial electricity power cuts in 1996, right? Hours and hours of them. But we are today doing the same thing, same way cutting this electricity. So I would like to propose today, let us do a smart power cuts. Right. So I am a member of the Smart Energy Council of Sri Lanka. I am a board member there. So we like the smartphones and smart TVs and other things. I would propose, let us do smart power cuts, because the A-level exam is coming up.
What are smart power cuts?
Yeah, let me explain. So the A-level exams are coming up. Do you want any house to lose power? So what I say is, CEB can give a target to all the consumers, right? Please reduce your consumption from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. by 30%, right? 30%. You switch off your all outdoor lights. Don't put your washing machine or ironing during this period. Switch off your fridge also for 1 hour if possible. You do that, we will not cut power. But if any of our feeders notice that you are not doing it, we will switch off that.
How practical is it, Professor?
No, that could be done. Because they are switching off at their substations. So they know the average load.
But Professor Vijaypala, even now, I mean, you mentioned the 1996 cuts, and I was actually in school at the time, but I remember at least in 1996 there was a timetable that was followed.
Yeah.
Right now it's just randomly the CB decides when to cut and where to cut.
But if the people are given the chance and then they know, if we don't do it, we will get our power cut. So there will be some effort by them.
Professor,
easily you can do it. Easily you can do it. But there is no, now at present there is no any chance like that, or people are not motivated either. So
Professor,
if you
Minister
ask everybody to
Gavin
reduce 30% of their power consumption, can't you do it at your home to keep continuity of power? Right? Then you are assured that no power cuts. So from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. you will not charge your car, electric car or washing machine and unnecessary things. But then you are assured that your daughter, son can read for A-level without any problem, and you can work and you can watch TV.
But as I said, if
the problem again, Professor Vijaypala, is that you come across a socio-economic issue there as well, because not everyone has electricity.
I fully agree with Professor.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if each individual can at least make a small power cut, very small one. If you get total, it will be huge. I said then.
My point is you can do it conveniently.
Convenient,
exactly.
Because using power for 2 hours is very inconvenient, or 3 hours is very inconvenient.
So Minister Gavin Lokuge recently suggested that we reduce the usage of street lights.
No, those things should be separately done.
Those are very minor
very
things.
small.
In 1973, this happened in UK.
I thought that was a smart energy plan to reduce the.
That's one. You continue that one. Adapt everything, then you get a huge quantity.
So do the power cuts in a smart way. But that's what I suggest.
The use
So
of smart way.
I wish Professor is still the chairman of CEB. But I want to come back. Sorry. We are now at least coming back to what we should be discussing.
A realistic one is.
What is the very first thing is conservation and reduction of those things. Right now, there has not been a single sort of appeal to the people to do that, what he's saying. No, it's much better to say this way, rather than say, please switch off lights. Yeah. You say, no, it's a sort of a correct and a strict arrangement. That is the first thing to do, which has never been done this time. This has been done before. I remember about 2012, when we were facing this crisis, we managed without power cuts.
Appeal to public.
Because there was a big appeal, these things in the media and all that sort of thing. Please switch off power, whether you are likely to get power cuts. We didn't do any of those things for the last so many years, because we had a very easy answer now. you go for emergency power. Now you see, you would have seen recently PUCL said, CB came to PUCL 15 times asking him to an emergency power. I think they allowed only once, but we didn't get power cuts. There is problems here. Those problems have not been looked at. That is the problem. You see, Professor would not admit when he tried to do that one, he was shifted out. That's why he's no longer chairman of CB. You see, now we'll have to do this. And also, permit me to continue on this. That is the very first thing to do. As they say, negawatts is much cheaper than megawatts. Not using it and reducing it. And I must also point towards SCA. SCA was formerly the Energy Conservation Fund. But when it became the SCA, they forgot the original mandate they had, energy conservation. They are not doing anything about it.
Yes.
Now, many things that you can do. Other one is, of course, what India did. India went into LEDs over the last 5 years. You know how much they saved? 48 billion units a year annually. And they reduced the peak power by 9,000 megawatts.
I can remember as he said, sometimes back as Slima put a sticker, some near switch, when you go off, switch off.
Yeah.
That's simple. So people tend
and also SCA, my hats off to them, sometime back when the CFL was coming on the line, they had a big program. And we saved 300 megawatts by that and 450 gigawatt hours. We can do similar or even more by converting to LED. Now, sometime back somebody said that they were going to import 10 million LED bulbs. Nothing happened. I mean,
no, CB imported it.
I don't know what happened to that.
No, they imported and distributed.
This is a feasible approach, this conservation approach right now as a short-term measure. Yes, Mr. Dissi.
You've been quiet, Mr. Dissi.
Yeah, you've been quiet. So I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion? You mentioned something earlier about
in 1973, this happened in UK. There was power cuts because in the Middle East there was a war and there's an oil embargo and there was no oil coming to UK. Those days, UK also used oil for power generation. Then they realized they should not depend on the Middle East countries for oil. They should start find their own resources. That is why they invested in the North Sea to find oil. That is where I got involved in oil business because that was my first job in the oil industry in 1974, right, because of this oil embargo. Now in 1973, what they did was they worked 3 days a week and the shops were closed early and there was no shop window lights and there's no street lights, no television. All that people actually helped the government. And, you know, they volunteered to, you know, switch off the lights and all this. So we can do that as well. I mean, we can do it, you know, because we can say, okay, no entertainment in the evening, no cinemas, no pubs, no parties, no nothing.
No neon lights, you know, flashing.
Yeah, no neon lights. And so then, you know, and then the people also will participate. Then they will know
but Mr. De Silva, this leadership, this sort of the conservation approach, that leadership has to come from the top.
It should come from the government.
I mean, we recently saw to open a 42-kilometer stretch of highway. We saw the size of the entourage that went along.
Exactly.
And that's probably the most vehicles that have ever been on that highway since from the time it was open to now.
Yeah, because the government, you know, the top people must give the example. I mean, if they...
So, you know, I think what I meant by is it feasible? Is it feasible to expect that kind of commitment from the top?
We have demand.
Is it feasible to expect that commitment? Sure, you can do your sticker campaigns, your publicity campaigns, and get the public to buy in. I think where you'll run into difficulty is getting the politicians to buy in and to actually commit to do that and to set an example.
Yeah, true. That is where you come in. The media should come in. You see, you have to take that.
Now, what you said, you know, I can give you a simple example. 2 days ago in your channel, there was a news article on news. in Borlaskamua, during the daytime, all the lights were on in the street. Street lights were on. And they filmed it. And you showed that on your channel news. And the news, some reporter asked that question from the Minister of Power. That's his electorate. So he said he will ask someone to inquire it.
That's the end of it.
That's the end of it.
So that is in his own electorate, no? So that is where is the commitment? There's no commitment from the top.
Yes, Mr. Sudwala, I want to bring up this issue of load shedding. Now, under the current, let's say, schedule and under the current environment, we have been told that right now there could be power cuts for about 1.5 hours. That could then be increased to 3 hours and then 6 hours, 9 hours. How, if things continue as they are, what kind of power cuts are we looking at? Are we going to face a situation we'll have 9-hour power cuts in, say, 3 months' time?
I think power cut, if you have the power cuts, of course, I think the Professor Vijaypal is more suitable to answer that question rather than mine is a petroleum specialty. So, but I think Mr. Vijaypal will answer better than me.
Okay, now, you know, the power cuts means it all depends upon how much oil the government can provide to CEP. I think if oil supply goes continuously, the power cuts will be shorter than 2 hours, even in the worst case, because that's about hydropower availability. So that could be managed if they can get oil for their current power plants. But the problem is, time to time, we lose the continuity of oil supply. Now today they have been given the chance for next 10 days, oil will be supplied. Then no one talks about the after 10 days.
11 days.
11 days or whatever. And then what?
Shut down the plant. And
so it all, that length depends upon whether there is a gap between this supply and the next supply. And now, and also remember, our water levels are going down. Therefore, when oil is not available, the length of power cuts will get gradually increased from 1.5 to 2 hours to 2.5 hours, because now the contributions from hydro will be gradually dwindling. So then we will have to wait until next rains comes, and of course, if the Norachole third unit comes in, that will be a relief, and that will put the pressure on oil power plants also less, and also the power cuts likelihood also to reduce. But still, it all depends upon whether the government can supply oil continuously to CEB, both furnace oil as well as diesel.
Oil security.
Yes.
All these is a very short term, you know, hand to mouth kind of this thing. But we can't continue on this one. At least we must, this year we must do something so that it doesn't happen next year.
And if drought continues, I think we get the more power cuts.
Yeah, true. And also thing is, we have to accept power cuts. So like Andra says, let's make it a smart power cut. So that has to be done immediately, tomorrow, right? If not before.
I'm sure that people will adapt to
that. People will.
If you promote it as media.
If you are open, it's wrong to say that no, we have enough dollars when we don't have.
There is something
you have to accept
something very important, because next 2 months is going to be very critical for Sri Lanka. It's February and March is a time, the winter times, the oil prices might go up. Now it is nearly 85. So supposing if it goes to 100, what will happen? No electricity or whatever it is, we must do power cuts and save energy. So that government leaders must take this initiative. You know, forget about all the other things. We must cut down the usage of fuel, because the prices might, because we don't have dollars. We have 45 billion in debts, and we don't want to add more debts to that, right? So as a responsible citizen of the country, we all should pay for it now. We got into this mess, whether we like it or not, we are in a big mess. We can't blame who did, we got into this mess. No, not only this government, maybe the previous government, all these governments are responsible for this mess. So we are all in it. Let's get together and get out of it. So the government must take the initiative, okay, this is the way to come out. we will, reduce the oil imports, but we will spend less dollars to import oil, and we will reduce then at least 3 months if we cut down until we get our, the hydro sorted out, hydroelectricity, till the next rain comes. We have to do that. Otherwise, we will get into more and more problems in financially and otherwise. So now we can't blame anybody. We have to blame only ourselves. But let's make a start now, sacrificing a little bit for the sake of the country. Forget about the politics.
Mr. Sudwal, a quick question. Yeah. When was the last time that the Sapagaskan refinery was operational? If I'm not mistaken, all of the oil that we're getting right now is refined oil, right? We're not getting crude and refining it.
Yes.
When was the last time that Sapagaskan was actually refining oil?
Now twice they shut down. Initially, I think about December.
There was a 60-day period, and then
a 9-day period. Somewhere I think end of December, somewhere middle of December, they had the remaining crude oil, finish it, then shut down. Again, they given about 15 or 20 days gap. Again, they got one shipment of crude oil, and before the next shipment comes, again refinery compelled to shut down. The refinery closing shutdown is another very expensive
endeavor. To keep operationalizing it and then shutting it down.
Shutdown is easy, but when you start up again, very expensive the procedure. So I don't think, and not only that, I told you the importation also has a lot of the additional the price components. Now you pay additional premium, additional evaporation charges, additional transfer losses, and if you operate the refinery, you can get the, I think more, you can save a lot of the dollars in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Sudwal. Shayan, Nazra, any final questions?
Mr. Sudwal, I have one simple question. There's an old saying that, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Tragedy tends to sometimes bring out the best in people and situations. Do you think there's an opportunity right now in the situation that Sri Lanka is in to come out of this situation? Are we in a position where we can actually sort out this long-standing issue in Sri Lanka's power industry?
Yes, I think if you take the entire situation as the problem, basically we are running sort of the foreign exchange, and why we are running sort of foreign exchange, one said the COVID affected the entire world, but here another issue is that we have taken so many the loans and make the mega projects and non-productive projects. And what we had to do in the past, so many the energy sector developments were not carried out, and the power plants and the new power plants, like as I said, LNG, and we were making so many the oil exploration research and the oil exploration activities so many decades, but nothing productive so far come out. And what we should do is, and at least the Sri Lanka, we should have our own energy saving mechanism and dollar earning, and whatever the industries. So we need energy. Energy is the primary requirement for any development, the dollar earning. So it is the both. We'll have to provide the electricity. Without electricity, you get the industries the collapses. So what I feel is now the oil the first you make the oil security, then you get the energy security. Then you make the wherever possible small, and I know that it is not easy to immediately earn dollars, but you can save dollars in two ways. One is to cut down unnecessary imports, other one is to import replacements. And so many oil products are now imports. I know that there are so many the ways we can have local energy production. So the industrials or the entrepreneurs should encourage to make more and more production to overcome this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Sudwal. And on that note, we're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it'll be the final round. We'll hear our final thoughts from our panelists today on how the immediate steps that we need to take to get out of this crisis.
one disinfectant to keep your hands, home surfaces, electronic devices and personal belongings safe from bacteria, virus and fungi. Sri Lanka's first SLS certified disinfectant, now with lemon fresh and ice pine fresh fragrances. Sun all-purpose disinfectant spray.
COVID-19 සඳහා ආරක්ෂිත පියවර. ජනයා වැඩි වශයෙන් සිටින ස්ථානයන්හි ගැවසීම මගහරින්න. රෝගය ආසාදිත පුද්ගලයන් හමුවීමට නොයන්න. මුහුණ, මුඛය, නාසය සහ ඇස් ඇල්ලීමෙන් වළකින්න. අනවශ්‍ය ගමන් බිමන් යෑමෙන් වළකින්න. මුඛාවරණය ඉදිරිපස ඇල්ලීමෙන් වළකින්න.
එළියේ හීනියට වහින වැහි පොද මුළු හිතම හිරිවට්ටල දානවා අප්පච්චි.
ඉස්සර මට හිටියේ එක පුතයි දුවල දෙන්නයි. දැන් පුතු 4 දෙනයි දුවල 4 දෙනෙක් ලැබෙනවා.
මේ උඹට පොඩ්ඩක් පුළුවන්ද මේ ලෝකෙට පොඩ්ඩක් ඇවිල්ලා යන්න?
ඇඩ්වර්ටයිසින් කරන්න නැත්තම් මැරෙන්න.
ඔය දෙකේම වැඩි වෙනසක් නෑ මල්ලි. ඒක නෙමෙයි. ආවයි හාවි කෝ.
මම පුරුදු වෙනවා. සත්‍යයි.
මම මේ ඔය ළමයින්ගේ හොඳට මේවා කියන්නේ. ඔය ගෑනු ළමයා පන්නගෙන යන වැඩේ නම් හරියන්නේ නෑ.
සුදු හාමිනේ එකපාරටම වෙනස් වුණේ කොහොමද? මේ තරම් ඉක්මනට මේ වගේ ලොකු වෙනසක්?
Welcome back. This is the final round of tonight's episode of Face the Nation. We're discussing the power and energy crisis. And to hear our final thoughts, first we'll move to Mr. Cyril Sudwalla, former head of laboratory and manager technical services, oil refinery, Sapugaskanda. Mr. Sudwalla, what are the immediate steps that need to be taken to get out of this crisis?
In order to achieve the energy security, we have to make sure that the fuel security is assured. That when you get the fuel security and the power plants, the cheapest one is either heavy furnace oil or the naphtha. And heavy furnace oil you cannot produce only in the refinery and supply to Sapugaskanda terminal. And naphtha also can be produced in the Sapugaskanda refinery. So those are the two cheapest. And importing the products also is very costly. So importing crude oil and making to the other products, naphtha, diesel, furnace oil or heavy furnace oil is the cheapest. So the government should think about importing rather than small parcels, import about at least the 90 metric tons of crude oil at least per month and continue the Sapugaskanda refinery. So you can achieve at least 50% of the fuel security. So that way the government also can save a lot of foreign exchange while having the energy security.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cyril Sudwalla, former head of laboratory and manager technical services, oil refinery, Sapugaskanda, highlighting the fact that we need to ensure basically our fuel security. Next, I'd like to move to Mr. Nimal De Silva. He's an offshore oil and gas exploration consultant. If you've been following the program, you'd have heard that Mr. De Silva got his first break in the oil and gas industry with North Sea oil exploration, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Mr. De Silva, given your years of experience, what are the immediate steps that we need to take right now at this juncture to get out of this present crisis?
The immediate step, I think we should have a national energy independence program. So we have to be independent from, depending on, outside. So that is only way is getting the LNG. So we should carry on as what we did earlier, using the Sapugaskanda refinery and, importing oil until we get this. I remember in 2011, this present governor of the bank was the governor that time, and they made a proposal to have a Commonwealth Games in Sri Lanka, and they had a budget for that, 265 billion rupees.
They spent 150 million on the bid.
Yeah, they had a party and all that, I remember that. But the budget they allocated is 265 billion. If they can make 265 billion 2011, they can do that as well now, no? If that money we can invest in Mannar Basin, right? Then we will gain, we will earn a lot of money from Mannar Basin because there is a lot of gas. And the energy minister who came on TV recently, he said there's $250 billion worth of, oil and gas in Mannar Basin.
Mr. De Silva, just before I move on to Mr. Jayasinghe very quickly, because you've spoken at length about the Mannar Basin as well. Hypothetically, let's say right now that we had the money and we began that investment, how long would it take to have that field or those rigs up and running and to start producing?
I think we can get the gas out within 3 years.
Within 3 years?
Within 3 years. Now the technology is available, although the water depth is too much. But
so this is including the drilling, the liquefaction plant, all of the infrastructure required. We can have it up and running within 3 years.
Yeah, we can run the power plants with our own gas within 3 years if we plan it properly. If we execute the project, without any corruptions and without any all that. That is one condition. If you
That's
have
a very big condition.
Corruption, then we will never get. So that on that condition, we can get the gas out within 3 years. I know we have done that in many fields, right? Yeah. Very similar fields, we have done this job. So 3 years, if we have that kind of money, 265 billion, they were going to spend on the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
And that time they can raise that money. Even now they can raise that money if they want.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nimal De Silva, offshore oil and gas exploration consultant. Next, I move to Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, the past president of the Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka. Mr. Jayasinghe, as one of the most fervent advocates of alternate energy sources on our panel tonight, I'd like to ask you, what do you think are the immediate steps that we need to take to get out of this crisis?
Yeah, you definitely must talk about immediate thing. I agree with, I've been told by people who know that 3 years is feasible. So I'm having a dream of that one. But that is not going to solve our problem for that 3 years. So immediate problem, like Professor mentioned also, immediate thing is conservation. And be careful, we are talking about switching off lights, but you go out on the road and see the number of vehicles running. The cars will come to a standstill before long. That is being kept away from the people's mind, you see. So that is wrong. They must be told that, okay, there's a crisis on, that's the elephant in the room actually. We spend, out of the $5 billion we spend on oil imports, only less than $1 billion goes to power generation, rest goes for transport. That is being ignored. But coming back to your question, immediately what we can do, definitely conservation has to be there. We'll have to try and save all that we can do. I don't want to get to argument about this, how do we use the hydro reservoirs, that's a different answer. But right now, although CEB could not do any power plants except the 100 megawatts in Mannar, we have done 500 megawatts of solar, another 130 megawatts of wind, all by private sector. They are not by the big people also. There are 36,000 people, including me, who have put solar plants. So we have contributed all that much to this thing. But that is against a huge resistance from the CEB. Right now there are 20 megawatts of solar projects ready to be switched on. That is being dragged on. I'm sure there should be at least another 60 megawatts which can come online within weeks of that. That is what we have to do. We have to get that energy, that we conserve the water that we have. So during the day, never mind, so solar is available in the day, let's use it during. That kind of thinking is not there. And also I have to beg to differ from Professor. about the storage and making it more firm, that is possible now. All kinds of nonsensical things have been said about the cost of storage and feasibility and all that.
So you think what Professor Vijaypala said about 39 rupees per unit for solar?
Well, that was one this. Right now, you should ask the private sector. There's a good decision made recently about allowing hybrid inverters, and I saw some kind of this thing that 39 rupees. I was told, I didn't see it officially, as what you would pay during the peak hour, right? Peak hour, sometimes we pay about 65 rupees or something to run the currently a single cycle plant. This is a short term thing. You see, it doesn't have to be that way. But we'll have to take that path. Like I said, I like to be indigenous. So when LNG comes, it's indigenous, I'll be very happy. But in the meanwhile, there's so much to do. And what you mentioned right at the beginning, I didn't go up. Our attempt to do biomass was blocked by the CEB. There's at least 80 megawatts of plants which are lying on the pipeline, not done since 2015. That blockage is still there. In spite of all the efforts by the State Minister and the Cabinet, CEB still refuses to do that one. Similarly for mini hydro. So why aren't we doing that one? You see, rather than saying that we are not trying to get 100% renewables, there are a lot of renewables we can do. If you do that one, each unit that we generate means that we are saving that amount of oil or coal for that matter. You see, now, thank God, Andrea agreed there are no more coal, so let's not waste time talking about that.
The coal bus has left.
That
coal bus has left the station.
Yeah, because we didn't have the money to buy a ticket anyway, because coal is now $250.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, past president of the Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka. And finally, to close off tonight's discussion, we have Professor Anura Vijaypala, Department of Electrical Engineering at the University of Moratuwa and former chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board. Professor Vijaypala, what are the immediate steps that we need to take to get out of this crisis?
Now, I think the problem is much bigger than what we thought and what we are talking about, because our oil import costs $400 million a month. Now look at the fertilizer issue that the government created. That is all about to save $400 million annually. Annual fertilizer import bill is $400 million. To save that, they got the wrong advice and went all around, and now you can see the country is in a very trivial situation for the food supply and everything. But look at the oil import bill, $400 million every month, right? So which is unaffordable because of the dollar crisis. If we had dollars, no issue. And the fund levels, our reserves have gone to the all-time low levels, and our credit ratings have gone to all-time low levels. So whoever says they have enough dollars, I think every common man now knows government has a huge dollar crisis and we can't buy things. And therefore, immediate solution the government should do is conserving, as Parakrama was saying, conserving every bit of oil that we import here. And at a short term measure, 3 months, 6 months. How we can do it? We have to go back to online working, at least say to non-productive government institutions, I would say, who are not contributing to solve this issue. Who are the parties who are contributing to solve this issue? They are the tourism industry, they are the tea industry, they are the export garments and other industries. So they should get uninterrupted fuel and electricity and everything. But there are many other government and private institutions which are living on the what we import, just providing services also in a non-productive way. So let us government call 50% of you work from home, and try to stop 50% of the vehicle fleet coming to Colombo every morning and to main cities, and thereby save the fuel that we waste on these non-productive things. Number one. Number two, now electricity conservation, no much effort. I was coming through, passing the Vihar Mahadevi Park, fully lit, right? Fully lit. How can you do that, right? Now the main news item in every channel is fuel and electricity crisis. You go through Colombo, fully lit Colombo. Now good if we can afford to. Now you are bigger now, you can't do that. So switch off them, at least 50% of them. And try to understand the question, problem, and then what I suggest is conserve fuel. Government take measurable steps to stop these things, both in electricity usage and fuel usage. And then after doing that also, if you have to go power cuts, go for smart power cuts, as I said, give the people the chance to take the challenge. We will not cut power to any of you. You reduce 30% of your consumption during these hours, and if you don't do, unfortunately, we will have to switch your feeders, right? So one day you do it. If they fail, they will understand. If they see their neighbor is putting unnecessary lights, they will knock on the gate and say, see, our entire area is not having power, you are not complying. And there will be a self control.
But you might also end up with a lot of vigilante justice, people trying their neighbors.
I think that should happen. That should happen. We are in a crisis. Remember, we are in a last 100 years worst crisis today.
Anyway,
I think when you look at all of the crises that Sri Lanka has faced, the worst crisis is when you allow people to take the law into their own hands.
Yeah, that is true.
It's always
but here I think the government should be proactive and take meaningful steps. Unless do that, I think the problem will go for worse and worse, and we will have power cuts of 6 hours long, and not only that, we will have long queues at every petrol shed.
Thank you very much, Professor Vijay Pala, Mr. Jayasinghe, Mr. De Silva, and also Mr. Suduwalla. It's been a very enlightening and enriching discussion on this crisis. Some very practicable and implementable short-term and mid-term solutions that we got out of this discussion tonight. So I'm very happy about that. Thank you very much also, Azra and Shehan, for your very pointed questions. So, in a nutshell, we need to ensure our fuel security. We need to ensure our energy independence. We need a national energy independence program. If we do start investment in the Mannar Basin right now, if we can find investors, we can have an LNG infrastructure up and running within 3 years. Ambitious? Maybe, but why not give it a try? Meanwhile, in the immediate term, in the immediate short term, switch off. As Professor Vijay Pala said, give yourself a smart power cut, reduce your consumption by up to 30%. Let's try to conserve some of that oil that we're spending $400 million a month on. Let's ensure that our industries that are bringing in the dollars, tourism, tea, garments, etc., the export industries are able to function. Let's maybe put non-essential public sector workers, or even non-essential private sector workers, on a work from home schedule, reduce consumption in that way, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get out of this crisis, and we'll get out of it well. Good night and good luck.